and welcome to the second episode of the Birkbeck Student Union Podcast. I'm Hattie and I'm your new Education Officer for the academic year 2025 to 2026. And I am very excited to kick off this season of podcast episodes with a talk and a Q&A with a fantastic library team who work here at Birkbeck. During this season of podcasts, we are hoping to introduce you to the variety of different teams that help Birkbeck run on a day-to-day basis and form part of the community that you, as students, are also a part of. So I will start by introducing you to each of the fantastic library staff we have here today.
Hi, I'm Stephen. I have two jobs in the library, actually. For half the week, I work as part of the front desk team, the user services team, as a team leader, and for the other half of the week, I'm one of our academic services librarians, as we call them, so specialist librarians supporting the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences.
Hi, my name is Anna. I am also an academic services librarian and I work with the Faculty of Business and Law.
Hi, I'm Adimaya and I have two jobs at Birkbeck also. I'm a user services assistant. You'll see me at the front desk in the library 4 evenings a week. And I'm also an associate tutor in the law school.
Thank you, guys, and thank you for your time and for joining us today. So first of all, we'd like to start by briefly going over the library and the different services that it can offer to students. I suppose that we all have some idea in our minds of what a library is, and probably the first thing we think of are lots of books, but there is so much more that the library and the library team can offer students. And I thought that this would be a fantastic opportunity for us to just sort of shine a light on some of those areas. One of the things I really wanted to ask a little bit more about is the role that you have as specialist academic service librarians and how students can benefit from making use of those librarians that work within their school, their academic school. So, Stephen, do you want to fill us in a little bit about that?
Sure, and Anna, feel free to add things if I miss them. But yeah, our role is like manifold. We do quite a few different things. So we're the liaison between the library and the department. So we talk to the academic staff about what resources, books and other resources the library should purchase. We do quite a bit of teaching. So inductions about using the library, but also trying to teach people searching skills, information resources, kind of information skills in general. So we go into classes or we run our own special sessions. So we do that quite a lot. The third big thing that we do is, yes, we're available one-to-one for all students. It doesn't matter what level you are, from foundation year to PhD students. You can meet us for a one-to-one and we can talk to you about your research, whether you are just at the beginning or whether you really think you've found most of what's out there, but you just aren't quite sure whether there's things that you're missing, whether it's that you want to be able to access broader resources than just Birkbeck Library and you want advice about that, whether you want help with citing and referencing your work, we can help with that as well. So we can do quite a lot. But yeah, you can make appointments with us on the library website, or we have a drop-in every weekday from 4:30 to 6 in the library. So do come and say hello. We do love talking to people and trying to help as much as we can.
Thank you. Anna, is there anything you'd like to add to that about your role as a academic services librarian?
I think Stephen more or less covered everything. It's just maybe to add that every faculty has got an assigned librarian. So we kind of specialize in our subjects. So we are specialists in certain databases. Having said that, we do often cover for each other. So if you can't make an appointment with your academic librarian because they on leave, for example, feel free to make an appointment with someone else and they should be able to help you.
Thank you. Can I just add something which some students might be wondering? So here at Birkbeck, we are shifting towards trying to be as inclusive of online learners as possible. So are your services sort of available to students via Teams? Are you able to sort of support students in an online capacity?
So our appointments by default are on Teams. So if you book one, the standard is on Teams, and that's where we do most of the appointments. If you prefer an in-person appointment, you can either come to the drop-in or just send us a follow-up email, say, I'm in the library, I'd prefer to meet you in person, and we can do that. But most of our appointments are on Teams, and we find that works quite well. We can share screens, we can, we can help quite well over that medium.
Fantastic. And so now, Adimaya, would you be able to tell us a little bit more about sort of how you try to support the students with the sort of first few weeks of term as they're getting to know the library? Are there any key points that you feel are worth noting for new students when they arrive at the library for the first or the second time?
That's a really nice question, actually. It's a very sweet question. Firstly, don't feel shy about coming to the front desk, even if you feel it's a really simple question. We often deal with people who, for example, haven't logged into My Birkbeck for the first time, who are navigating Moodle, because we do have different online platforms to help you. Also, other queries like, how do I look up a book? We are quite happy to help you look up things on the library catalogue, and even show you how to look things up on shelves. It's quite a varied job. And one of the loveliest things is seeing a student's face light up when they've acquired a new skill. So don't be shy. Just come to the front desk and ask.
Thank you. And I have to personally say that I have definitely made use of asking questions to the front desk during my time as a student at Birkbeck. And I have to say that every single member of the library team are absolutely just fantastic, extremely helpful, and seem to have more knowledge than any other members of staff I found in such a variety of different areas. So we are very lucky here at Birkbeck. I suppose that leads me on to one of the questions that I had, which was, what is the best piece of academic advice that you have for students? Perhaps that's something you received when you were doing an undergraduate degree, or something you've picked up during your time working at the library. So Stephen, do you want to go first?
I think this might be a quite narrow answer, but I think the thing that I find most students are grateful for when I pass it on to them is actually in the field of referencing. And it is about using reference management software from the start. So we have a program called Zotero, which you can use, that can put everything that you read in one place. It can help you with writing a reading list and your footnotes at the end of, when you're coming to write your assignments, and just with organizing your thoughts and, your reading about a subject. And it saves you so much time and so much stress potentially, at the end. So I think if I was going to give one piece of advice, take a little bit of time. There's resources out there to help you with it. You can come and ask, but take the time to learn about that, and it will really pay off for you, later on.
Brilliant. Anna.
This was actually going to be my answer, Stephen.
Sorry.
We should have talked about it beforehand. I was going to say about saving your references and keeping track of your references. And the best way to do it is definitely by learning how to use a reference management software. But because you already said that, what I would add is maybe don't wait to contact your librarian until the very last minute. Sometimes people, contact us and they they have a day or two until handing in. And research tends to take longer than you think. It's not a straightforward linear process, so give yourself enough time to research properly for your assignment or your dissertation, and contact us sort of before you get desperate.
And can I also add, would you suggest that applies to all students from their first year, as opposed to just once they reach that point of doing their dissertation, that they suddenly kind of think, gosh, I should make contact with the specialist librarian in my department? Can you support students from the very start in their first assignment?
I would say so, because what we often say hear from students is, oh, I wish I came to you earlier, or I wish I knew that. So there's definitely some tips and advice that we can give you that you can use right from the beginning of your studies.
Thank you. Adimaya.
Well, I always tell my students at the very beginning, treat your degree as a personal journey and not just a piece of paper. So make use of everything that the library has to offer. There's a lot in there for your well-being also. So remember, read for pleasure as well as for your degree, because it's such a lovely balance. And that's what Birkbeck is about, really. We like to see you grow in every way.
I think that's such a lovely point about trying to read for pleasure. Drawing on that then, would you be able to tell us your favourite book, whether that be non-fiction or fiction? Stephen.
I mean, yeah, it's difficult. There are so many books that one could choose as a favourite. But a book that I reread a lot is a book called Cold Comfort Farm. It's a novel written in the 1930s, which I think it's very funny. And it's a book that I read maybe if I'm a little bit stressed and I want to just take my mind off things. But, I also find some of the things it's saying about the way the world works and how you can interact with that as an individual to be actually quite useful and interesting as well. So if people haven't read it, I would recommend it. I do sometimes recommend it to people and they say, what on earth do you see in this book? I just thought this was, perhaps very silly, but I personally enjoy it. So
thank you.
I agree with you. I like this book. I don't know if it's probably not my best book. What is my best book? I think it would have to be Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel, and the whole trilogy. She's just an amazing writer. Well, she was an amazing writer. And you almost, when the first time I read it, I could not believe how good it was. You almost have to sort of read between the lines when you're reading it, but it's just excellent, and I would recommend it to anyone, not just for people who like sort of historic books, but just to anyone who likes a good novel.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to have two, an academic and a non-academic?
I'm going to let you have two.
Okay.
I'm going to say that's okay.
My all-time favourite reading for pleasure has got to be Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, because the first time I read it, it blew my mind. It describes a future where we can't read books and where your imagination and your intellectual progress is really, really streamlined. And my second one is definitely a book that every law student should read. It's called The Case of the Spelunkian Explorers. Ooh. So it's a fictitious legal case about a group of men who are trapped underground and have to eat one of their group.
Oh,
I know.
Not a light-hearted topic.
But it's a fascinating read. I'm not going to go too deeply into it because it'll give
spoilers,
give a lot of it away, but every law student should read that. And we've got it in the library. We've got both of those books in the library.
Brilliant. I won't tell my favourite books because I'm very indecisive, but I will say that one book that I always feel was one of the best books I read as a young adult was still Mallory Blackman, Noughts and Crosses. And I don't know if it was the way that it felt like such a powerful book at a sort of pivotal point and age in my life that maybe led me to have more interest in sort of social, political issues. But that is a fantastic book for young adults and even adults. The next question I have is a little bit broader. And it is, what do you see as the purpose of education and learning and knowledge? Stephen, so it's a big ask, that one, but maybe you could just sort of think of a couple of pointers.
I think people have to find their own purpose in what they're doing in education. And I don't think there can be a one-size-fits-all answer. That is one thing that education does. It is about, I don't want to say self-improvement because I don't think that's the way people are, that you start in one place and you gradually improve until you form yourself into the perfect person. But self-development, at least, let's say, and that is an extremely valuable part of education. I think university education is moving the field of knowledge in general forward, and that, everybody at university, again, from foundation year students until until PhDs, are in a small way, perhaps, but in some way, involved in moving knowledge forward, in thinking about new concepts, in a world of discovery and, development of ideas. And that is also hugely important. Education affects the world in so many different ways, not just in terms of what happens inside of schools and universities, but in terms of what you then go out from those institutions and take with you, into careers, into your personal lives, into your social engagement, into everything else. That was waffly, but it was a big question, as you said.
It was a very big question, and yes. I don't think it was. I think it's actually a truthful point, which is that there is maybe perhaps not one purpose to education. Anna?
I've heard or I've read somewhere that education is basically our only defense against dictators and fake news and lies. And this is becoming, I think, more and more important these days, and where sort of fake news and lies are everywhere on social media, in media. I think the only defense against it is to learn how to think critically and how to evaluate your sources. And this is one of the purposes of education, and one that we sort of contribute to as librarians as well.
I think that's a really fantastic answer. And it actually leads me to a point. I just wonder if you would like to draw on the kind of influx of AI and how that is perhaps influencing not only your role as a library staff member, but also education more widely. And that idea of being the key to sort of truth and preventing sort of that false narrative and false news.
I think my sort of problem, the way I see it with AI is that it's basically designed to sound very confidently and give authoritative or answers that sound authoritative, but they're not really, because it's designed to please you, to give you an answer, even if it doesn't know. So I'm worried that students will be relying on AI as for their sources, for their assignments. It's not there yet. A lot of the sources that it gives are made up. They don't exist. Sometimes basically it just makes things up. So you do have to be very careful. I get how it can be helpful as a starting point, for example, or to give you some points to think about. But I don't think it can substitute sort of a lot of what we teach about finding and relying on good resources.
Thank you. Adimaya.
Well, I think Anna and Stephen have answered the question basically, but I do agree with them that an education is designed, or it should be, a way or a journey towards the best version of yourself. And every student should really be getting in touch with their own personal ethos, I think. And one of the beautiful things about Birkbeck is that we teach critical thinking. So, when you are coming to the library, tackling your reading list or whatever, don't just look at what you've been told to read. Just explore what's beyond that list, actually. That's it, really. I think
that's a really lovely answer. And I think inadvertently, you're kind of also drawing on that concept of Birkbeck teaching critical thinking. And actually, perhaps it's teaching those critical thinking skills that is the way we combat the rise of AI. And I think sometimes when I'm thinking about AI, I wonder, is that eventually going to sort of subdue our ability to think critically for ourselves and to sort of do the thing which a library kind of tries to foster, which is going out, finding that knowledge, finding that information through a textbook. I know we now have a lot of online resources, and so it's slightly easier to sort of get a computer software to filter the reading for you. But I still love getting a book and opening it and sort of touching the page and looking for that part that seems to answer your question. And critical thinking skills, I think, are extremely useful. And I think maybe it took me a while to realize just how important being able to think critically about text is. So thank you. That was a difficult question. So the next question I have for you guys is, as Birkbeck and as other universities begin to shift towards online learning, here at Birkbeck, we're starting to incorporate a number of high flex classes. And for those of you that never experienced a high flex lesson, it's where some students are taking part via Teams online and other students are physically present in the room. So it differs slightly to an online only course in that it gives those students the flexibility to sometimes attend in person and sometimes attend online. And so with that in mind, how do you see the future of libraries as we shift towards online learning?
So for me, I think there's a few things that we could say. Firstly, we support students who are not studying remotely or who spend part of the time not coming into campus. We've already talked about providing our appointments that way. We post out books, but crucially, nearly all of the online material that we have access to, ebooks, journals, databases, can be used wherever you are. You don't have to be on campus. You don't have to be using a VPN. You can just log into it with your Birkbeck credentials. But we are always trying to improve that offering. And if people have suggestions for extra services we could add or other things we could do come and talk to us. We are always, looking for ways to improve. So that's one thing. I think fundamentally, though, I don't think the purpose of libraries changes, whether the information is primarily provided physically and in print or whether it's provided online. The function of libraries remains the same, and I think it will remain the same, and I think it is an important and valuable function. And I would say also, I don't think that reading material in print is completely dying out. There are many people who still do prefer to read in print, and I think that will continue for a long time to come. You can see with book sales, in fact, that they have been increasing, not decreasing lately. The final thing I would say, though, and I think it's just maybe people are not always aware of this, is there is a challenge in terms of the fact that as things have moved online over recent decades, the cost of resources has really, really gone up. I think sometimes people see an ebook version that they can just buy for themselves and read on their personal device, and they think that libraries can buy that for the same price, which might be even less than for the physical resource. That is not true. Ebooks are services; they're not products, and they cost an awful lot of money. You know, in most cases, much more than a print book does. You know, with a print book, a library or anybody else can own it as an object, can lend it, can give it away, can sell it, can do whatever you want to do with it. That is not the case with ebooks. And there has been an infrastructure that's grown up around e-resources and e-journals also, this is true of, which has allowed some of the companies that provide those materials to charge very high prices. In some cases, they have monopolies. And there are real challenges to affordability for these things. So, I don't think, in a sense, that shouldn't matter for you as students, but it does, because that is why sometimes, you know, we don't have everything that you would want and everything that you would need as much as we would like to.
Thank you. That is very interesting, because I wasn't aware actually of the additional costs for libraries to sort of gain access to these e-resources. And I think perhaps some of the other listeners will be interested in looking at campaigns around that. And is there any kind of campaign you could recommend regarding ebooks?
There's definitely information and resources out there. If you look at ebooks SOS, you can just Google it, or we can, you know, provide a link. Then they have quite a lot of information and things that you can get involved in. Yeah.
Brilliant. Anyone else want to come in on the online learning and the future of libraries?
Yes. So as Stephen said, in a way, we already there in that most of our teaching, most of our one-to-ones are online, and most of our resources are online resources. But I think precisely because of that, because there's so much information online, people still need librarians because they need to know where to look and how to find these things. So you need the right keywords. You need to know sort of which resources to access and how best to use them. So people still need librarians. And also libraries as sort of physical spaces, I think, will continue to be popular. And indeed, they are popular. If you go to the library or any academic library, they always seem to be full of students, because people need that third space where they can properly concentrate around people who are doing the same thing. For a lot of students, and even personally for myself, it's much easier to do work sort of not at home. But, you know, obviously we have offices. Students do not have offices. They often have just one bedroom. Sometimes your home may be noisy. You might not be able to concentrate. And the library provides that space where you can go and sort of study in peace. And we do have a variety of spaces. We have group spaces. We have individual spaces, silent floors. So I think the library will continue to be important in that way.
Thank you. Anything to add, Adimaya?
No, I totally agree with Anna. We have some amazing bookable spaces in the library, and the human aspect, interacting with other students, cannot be underestimated. It's so important to your well-being while you're studying. HighFlex is great because it makes education accessible to everybody, especially if you're really busy. But coming into the library, it's just a completely different feeling. We have a lot of people that are escaping their children, for example, in the evening, coming in, but also students that like to study in groups, because there are quite a few courses like law and business whereby things like professional networking are really important. So try and explore, you know, the bookable spaces if you can in the library, because they're really, really useful.
Thank you, guys. I think that's very interesting to talk about the point around space, and actually makes me think about where libraries offer more to students than just a place for them to sort of access resources and knowledge, but also can kind of act as that sort of base and that sort of sense of a hub and a centre point for their studies during their time here. That's a sort of unchanging place, because for a lot of students at Birkbeck, they're taking a variety of modules, and it might be in several different buildings, and they may not always be with the same students. But one thing that doesn't change throughout your time as a student is your ability to use the library, and that is a kind of focal point. I'd also like to just kind of draw a little bit more about the spaces that are on offer in the library, because there are those fantastic bookable spaces. There are some of which that are specifically bookable for students with a disability registered with the university, and you can book those online for a one-to-one time period of, I think forgive me if I'm wrong, but is it 3 hours maximum a day that you can book the study rooms?
Yes, I think that's right. Yeah.
So you can have a 3-hour slot where you can learn on your own and independently. What is the booking process for the group study spaces?
So there's just a form on our website. So our website is absolutely the gateway to everything. So just Google Birkbeck Library or put it into your search bar if you don't have access to it immediately. But yes, you can find the option for group study pods, and you can make a booking a few weeks in advance if you want to study together as a group. And some of you can be in person and some online as well, because we have screens and that technology in those pods to enable like a hybrid meetings.
Fantastic.
As well.
So now,
did you want to?
I was just going to say, if in doubt, if you don't know how to do it, or if it's a bit confusing, just come to the front desk. One of us can help you. And if you've done it once, you will definitely be able to do it again.
So make use of those independent spaces. So the next question I wanted to ask you is a little bit away from your role as a librarian, and is a little bit more of a sort of, I guess, another lighthearted question. And it's, if you could be Vice Chancellor for the day at Birkbeck, what would you do?
Okay. There are so many things that I could do as if I was Vice Chancellor for a day. I'm actually not going to give a lighthearted answer. I'm going to give a sort of maybe slightly political answer. But I think there are a number of people at Birkbeck who are campaigning around the issue of Birkbeck's finances and the way that we invest some of the money of the institution into fossil fuel companies, for example, into companies that are involved with occupations and other things like this. And this is something we've been asking the Vice Chancellor to address for some time. So if I were Vice Chancellor for the day right here, right now at Birkbeck, I would take the opportunity to address that issue and to announce that Birkbeck was going to divest from those companies and from those areas. So that's my, not lighthearted,
okay.
but answer. Yes.
This is a space to share your honest opinions and your honest views. So thank you for sharing that. And actually, it makes me think about an organisation that I attended a session from called Students Organising for Sustainability. And actually, they are thinking through the Sustainability Society here at Birkbeck of offering that training specifically to Birkbeck students. So if you are a Birkbeck student listening to this who cares about where the university invests its money, even inadvertently through who they bank with, then look out for Students Organising for Sustainability, because they might be offering an ethical finance training session at some point this academic year. So anyone else want to come in on what they would do if they were Vice Chancellor for the day?
This is completely different. But I would make everybody swap roles for a day or even a week if I could. And you don't get to choose which role that you do for that week. You have to do something that is completely different to your job role. The reason I would do that is because it is about kind of maintaining Birkbeck's ethos and also making it a sustainable ecosystem, because universities are not businesses per se. They shouldn't be treated as such. They are ecosystems whereby we are expected to contribute and grow. And if you take on a role that's completely different to your own, you put yourself in somebody else's shoes. So you experience a completely different part of the ecosystem. And I think as a member of staff who has 2 roles here, one of the joys of coming into work is that I get to live the entire Birkbeck ethos in my working life. And it's really, really lovely. I look forward to coming into work every day, regardless of what I'm doing. And I think that's really important for the kind of the spirit of the place. So that's what I would do.
That's a fantastic answer. No. So another question before we kind of close our conversation, and I thank you for your time. I wanted to also talk a little bit about a kind of topical issue that kind of gets battered about, and that is around the cost of higher education for students. We just heard from Rachel Reeve that it looks like universities will get the go-ahead to raise tuition fees in line with inflation. So that's another sort of potential rise on the already relatively costly amount that students pay for a degree. I attended a session last week, actually at another library, Senate House Library, where one of the things being discussed was how you make university education accessible to all, particularly for those who may come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And what was interesting was hearing the view that actually by having free education for higher education, you advantage those from wealthy backgrounds as opposed to those that you might, in the first instance, think would be given a greater chance to attend university. I wonder if you have any views individually about the cost of higher education, and if you could, what your ideal policy would be on that.
I think education should be free. I think for me, that's not a controversial viewpoint. And there are many other countries in the world that make higher education free, and I think still are able to open their universities to people from more disadvantaged backgrounds and to other kind of things. I think I can totally, if you just made higher education free tomorrow, that would not be the answer to anything, because there are a lot of costs in the system, as we've kind of outlined before. And there are a lot of things that universities do, in terms of offering opportunities to all kinds of different groups of people that we'd want to carry on. We would not want to see free higher education, meaning a degraded higher education or higher education on the cheap, for sure. But it's a question of what we as a society want to fund. I think education is very important. I think it's something that we should prioritize as a society. And if we do that, if it's something that we prioritize, then it's something that we can make free. And by being made free, that makes it accessible to, everybody who chooses to participate in it in our society.
Anyone else? Thank you.
I don't know if it should be free, but I also don't know how it can be so expensive. I think it's probably the most expensive in Europe, but at the same time, universities are struggling. So how is it that other sort of developed European countries, France or Germany, for example, higher education is a lot less expensive there? I don't know. Maybe universities are still struggling, but somehow, they managed to make it work and still have world-class institutions. Mm. It's free where I come from still. So clearly it can be done. And in my experience, maybe I can say that because I'm not originally from here, UK is incredibly sort of tends to be inward looking rather than sort of looking at maybe how other countries do it. So I don't know if free higher education is the answer, but I feel like it could be cheaper than it is.
I think the interesting point is that idea of a business model. And actually it was Adimaya, I wanted to draw a little bit more on what you said about not being a business as such. I think it was Adimaya, sorry. Was it Anna? But is there anything you want to add on the cost of higher education? And then maybe we can talk a little bit about the idea of business versus knowledge and the priorities.
Because I think that dichotomy, business and knowledge, it just it's so important now. It's kind of rearing its ugly head in the worst possible way, isn't it? Because it's reminding us that our economy actually is backwards. We pay people who look after money millions in bonuses, and people who look after human life get paid minimum wage. It's really weird. But I think university education should be free. One of my bugbears as a taxpayer is that my money doesn't go towards investing in the next generation in the right way. God, I don't really want to go into any detail because this does actually make me quite angry.
Yep.
As an educator, I think universities are doing the best that they can, but it's a sign of our times that they are in the state that they're in. I don't know if I'll get into trouble for going into to saying any more, but I personally think that education up to degree level, including degree level, should be free, because actually it's the least we can do for the next generation. I feel very sad that generations after me have to pay through their nose to get a degree, and then they still can't afford housing and the basics. It's just appalling.
And they are effectively also taxed by having to repay student loans in many cases maybe not the rest of their lives, but for many, many years.
Yeah, it's very unfair.
Just want to reassure you, Adimaya, I don't think anyone's going to get into trouble for anything they said on this podcast. But that is it. But this is an important point about the value again of education in universities, because they are the kind of places where everyone who is part of the institution, students and staff, can, have a free exchange of ideas and can, share and debate and discuss without the threat of, being sacked or being, shut down for for ideas that other people might disagree with. So yeah, you're not going to get into trouble, and that's part of why these institutions are important, I think.
And I also really thank you for being prepared to sort of answer some of the questions that are slightly outside the remit of your role in the library, because I think it draws on the point you've just said, Stephen, that we are here at university in order to learn. And that comes in a variety of different forms. And I think the sharing of knowledge is something that I personally feel is one of the biggest assets of going to university. It's not just about the people that are on your course that you take a module with, but it's during my time here as education officer, I want to ensure I facilitate wherever possible the chance for students to hear from academics in all different departments, and to hear from the experience of yourselves as actual ex-students, or those doing PhDs, or those teaching within the university, as well as members of the library team. And through that, creating discussion, creating debate, and encouraging students to be vocal. I think it's a really strange sort of juxtaposition that we have in the UK, where we do have some of the most expensive higher education, but we also have some of the most sought after degrees and institutions. And we are renowned across the world for the standard of, research that is taking place and quality of teaching. But is it becoming increasingly inaccessible for those most marginalized in society to actually access that? And are we actually just looking at taking steps backwards away from sort of university being a mechanism for social mobility? And in fact, it's actually going to return to being a way to maintain a sort of structured class system where the elite continue to be able to access knowledge, whereas those that are from more marginalized groups are unable to, afford to do so.
I was just going to say, I think that's where the library actually leads, as the beating heart of any university, because it is accessible to everybody. And one of the lovely things about our library is that we do stock the work that some of all of our academics have published. There's some amazing books in there, physical books in there. So please, please, please do explore not just the library, but also Birkbeck academics and what they've actually published, because you'll find a wealth of knowledge about this very debate in there. It's fascinating.
Thank you. Is there anything else any of you would like to add?
Just to say thank you for giving us this opportunity to come on the podcast, and thank you for organising it, everyone who has done that. I think it's really nice to be able to talk directly to students. For me, I hope to see you more often and soon, accessing our resources and coming to talk to us at the desk, as Adimaya has said, and coming to talk to us as academic services librarians.
As we close this episode of the podcast, I also want to thank everybody for coming. So I really appreciate your time and taking it out of your busy schedule to come and speak to us as students. And I also want to say that as a student union, we are really keen to hear from you guys, actually. So as well as heading down to the library and saying hello to the service desk staff, then please drop into our office, send us an email. You can send me an email at su-education@bbk.ac.uk. And I hope you've enjoyed getting a little bit more insight into what happens at the library and getting to know your librarian staff. And I hope you will join us for another episode very soon. So thank you all for your time.